Welcome back to On Texas Football, this week's edition of the Recruiting Breakdown. I'm CJ Vogel, joined as always by Gerry Hamilton. Today we're going to go position by position, just trying to fill out the remaining needs for the 2025 class. Texas now with 22 commits in the cycle, without even gaining a commit, right? That's a reclassification of Zayless Hicks into 2025. Listen, about 28 days away, a little less than that for signing day, that December 4th period, which is all the more important. Gerry, before we start getting going with this position-by-position breakdown of what's remaining in the 2025 class, a quick word from Mark Saunders and Allstate, our sponsor for this weekend's Recruiting Breakdown.
Yeah, when it comes to protecting all your stuff, wouldn't it be great to have one place that protects it all? I got some great news for you. That's Texas Allstate agent Mark Saunders, serving the Austin and Round Rock area and the entire state of Texas. He's the only insurance agent you'll need for all of it. Everything from your home, car, and boat, to your motorcycle, RV, and ATV. Call Texas Allstate agent Mark Saunders' office today at 512-218-8571. Are you in good hands? With more than 35 years of experience, you'll be in great hands with Texas alum Mark Saunders. How good of hands? Jamie French would be jealous of how good these guys' hands are at Mark Saunders' office. Again, if you're looking for someone local to the Austin and Round Rock area and the entire state of Texas, give Mark Saunders a call, 512-218-8571.
Perfect. Thank you, Gerry, and thank you, Mark Saunders, again for sponsoring each and every week's Recruiting Breakdown. We teased it at the beginning, but now it's time to listen. Texas at 22 commits in the current cycle. They're right there at number 5, number 6, teetering back and forth. We'll start on the offensive side of the ball because why not? And then we'll move on over to the defensive side of the ball where there might be a little bit more movement towards the end of this month, of course. But we'll start at quarterback, Gerry, and you'll take us down the list. We got a nice graphic here from our producer, Matthew, as well, that we'll bring up. But starting at quarterback, Gerry, let's get to it.
Yeah, so for sure, we're just going to get looked at position by position. And while we talk here, there's remaining targets for Texas. Let's start at quarterback. KJ Lacey, done. One quarterback in the class. KJ Lacey in the playoffs with Saraland as they look to go to a third straight state championship game. They won it his sophomore year, lost in a state title game his junior year. See if they can make one more run there. CJ running back, done. 2 guys in the class. That's James Simon out of Calvary Baptist in Shreveport, and Ricky Stewart out of Tyler Chapel Hill. They're getting ready for another run. They lost the state title game last year. Wide receiver, 3 guys, CJ. And with that is Jamie French and Khalil Lockett. Both those guys were on campus last weekend for the Florida game. And then there's Dalen McCutcheon. And look, if Texas were to add a 4th, it would be some elite prospect that happened to decide in the last second he was going to flip. So there's probably a couple of those guys out there that Texas wouldn't turn down if the phone call was made. CJ, then on the offensive line, we got the 5 commitments. You got Devin Coleman. You got Jordan Coleman. You got John Mills. You have Nick Brooks. By the way, Nick Brooks said he's not making an official visit to Auburn. There have been some scuttlebutt on that. He's not making an official visit to Auburn. And then you have the 5th offensive line commit. But then there's Michael Fasusi, CJ. And Michael Fasusi is going to be interesting because he's got a decision to make. In whether he sticks in there with Oklahoma and through a potential 5-7 season and offensive coordinator change, or does he continue that conversation with Texas? It's going to be interesting to see what Fasusi does, right, CJ?
Yeah, of course. He's one that came down to Texas and Oklahoma, Gerry. And when you come down to where these two teams kind of project long-term in the sense of, program trajectories right now, it's a bit of a difference, right? Oklahoma, who knows what the future of Brent Venables and that staff is looking like. I would assume Bill Bedenbaugh sticks around at Oklahoma to, even with some staff changes eventually coming. But you never truly know, especially if these next 2 games don't result in a bowl-eligible bid for the postseason in Texas. Again, if they take care of business, they'll be sitting in the SEC championship game with the berth clinched in the college football playoff. Things might change with Michael Fasusi. Until then, it really remains one of those kind of wait and sees at the moment. Gerry, I'll pitch to this at the end of the defensive side of the ball, but when we start looking at what this next month entails for the playoffs and for the high school level, there's certainly some guys up here who have already won state championship rings. Yeah. And this year might be looking to add another or earn their first. I'll tease to you at the end, but moving on to the defensive side of the ball, I'll pull back that target graphic back up a lot more on the defensive side of the ball, specifically in that front seven. I know that defensive line has been a hot topic as well. What's the latest as we trek on 1 week closer to that signing day period?
Yeah, two tremendous defensive linemen committed, Myron Charles and Josiah Sharma. Tremendous guy, both prospects. I think both top 100 prospects in the country. Josiah Sharma out of Folsom in California, Myron Charles out of Port Charlotte in Florida. I saw Myron Charles a couple of weeks ago. Looked awesome. Skinny ankles at 6'4.5", 305, 80-inch wingspan, 10-inch hands. Really good motor. Had a really hard-working motor type of day in practice late in the season, which you don't always see from the big kids. So very impressed with Myron Charles. But then, of course, look, it's the fans want to know who's going to be added to Myron Charles and Josiah Sharma. Well, here's the answer. We don't know. And we're going to be honest with you. We don't know how it's all going to play out. You see Joseph Mbaktu, who's scheduled to be at Florida this weekend. Auburn very much in it. Texas very much in it. USC's trying to be very much in it. That's West Coast USC. And then Florida. But right now, Texas, Auburn. It seemed to be the two getting the most traction. USC is potentially there, though. He had a good visit out there. Does Georgia try to make a late run here? They've made more of a run at Kellen Wy than Mbaktu of late as they try to add another defensive lineman to go with a great class they already have, along with Justice Terry, who we're about to mention. Walter Mathis there, you see there. If he doesn't make it in for the November 23rd game, that ship has sailed. Kellen Wy spoke with somebody close to that recruitment yesterday. The top three, Florida State, where he remains committed. South Carolina, he was at the A&M game, and they've done a really good job with culinary. He wants to be a chef one day, so working into that and around that major in Texas. Those are the top three. Georgia is on him, but I think Georgia's probably fourth in his mind. Then there's USC, Southern California. He has a teammate currently committed there that may flip to South Carolina, though something to watch. He went out to USC, had a great visit. The key with Wynn is Texas needs to get his father back on campus. His father did not make the June visit. It was just him and his mom, and they FaceTime with Kellen Wynn's father. But I think there's a thought that Texas really needs to get the father on campus if they have a realistic shot to win. And I'm not saying they can't, but I think Texas would feel much better about their chances. The issue there is Kellen Wynn's in the playoffs. Now, they're Irwin County, who they're playing Saturday, is heavily favored to beat them. So we'll see what happens there. That could open up the November 23rd potential visit weekend for Texas. You see Malcolm Simpson on that list. Nebraska commitment. Texas hasn't scheduled him for an official visit. Then there's five-star Justice Terry, who is Georgia, Texas, Auburn, Alabama. I mean, those are the battles you want to be in, but you have to cast a wide net to win them. And so the question there will be, can Texas pluck two of those guys at the end and finish with a four-man class? They'll still have to go to the portal, but can they finish with a four-man class?
I was going to ask you, is four still the number that you're looking at on the defensive line? And, you know, of this group, I mean, you've seen these guys in person. Is there a guy right now that complements what Texas has pretty well with Myron Charles and Josiah Sharma? Or is it, hey, get on the campus, we'll develop you, change the bodies a little bit if need be, and best available, whoever wants in, you're in?
I think ideally, I mean, and I think it's the same with Georgia. I mean, Justice Terry, because he's almost like a Alfred Collins. He plays a 5. He can play a 3. So he's a highly coveted player. You know, you've seen that big jumbo guy. It's going to be 6'5", 310 pounds, has the athleticism to play at a 5, even line up outside to tackle at times, or can also roll in and play that 3 and do it effectively. So that, I think, is one. Joseph Mbaktu, from an upside standpoint, is such an intriguing prospect because he has such natural power. He's got long arms. He's got big hands. And you look at him, and he's 6'4.5", 6'5", 280, and you're like, this guy's not even – he's just scratching the surface. It's his first year playing football. Now, he's not an instant impact guy, so you weigh that. But a year into college, man, Joseph Mbaktu's his ceiling's really high.
And, of course, you combine that with what Texas has on the defensive end spot already, and it's looking like it's going to be a pretty solid group on that pass rushing front right there. Speaking of defensive ends, Texas has 2 in the class right now, Smith Orogbo, Lance Jackson. You got to be pleased with both of them. But
yeah, no, I think Lance Jackson's one of the best prospects in the country. I mean, there aren't many guys that you can sit there and say, okay, he's going to be 6'6", 280, 285, and he's actually going to be a legitimate edge player. but in the NASCAR package, you can roll him inside and he's going to be tremendous. I mean, so there aren't many of those guys in college football either, and they're definitely not at high school prospects. Smith-Orogbo's coming off the knee surgery. We'll see where he's at in the spring, if he's available in the spring for Texas, but he's a explosive bend athlete that can really get after the quarterback naturally, has high upside. But then look, Texas is looking at one of the best players in the country. That's Javion Hilson, 6'4", 238 out of Cocoa High. I saw him a couple weeks ago. Texas or Texas A&M. That's where the battle's at for a player from Cocoa. Welcome to the SEC, right? Texas and Texas A&M battling in Cocoa, Florida for one of the top edge prospects in the country. If Texas were to win out for Hilson, arguably the best edge class Texas assigned him in my years covering this. I mean, yes, Colin Simmons is Xena. Colin Simmons is a great prospect, but Lance Jackson, probably 5-star guy. Smith-Orogbo, top 100 guy. Javion Hilson, top 40 guy in the country. I mean, and some people had Smith-Orogbo prior to senior top 40 in the country. I mean, that is an elite edge group. We'll see if they went out for Hilson.
Yeah, to your point about spinning edge rushers to the interior, I was rewatching that Florida game, and for Texas to kind of put into perspective what you might have there in terms of versatility, it was Barron Sorrell who was lined up as like a 4-eye, 5-tech to have Trey Moore and Colin Simmons on the outside with Alfred Collins on the interior. That's kind of the level of versatility that this edge group is providing at the moment. But moving to linebacker, because I know that there's still some targets remaining at linebacker. You got Elijah Bo Barnes, who he dropped his senior tape today, Jerry, and my goodness, he was flying all over the place. Jonathan Cunningham also in the class. But then there's a third one, and it's been an evasive and elusive third option right now for the Longhorns. Is there an option picked out, or is it just, hey, we'll see where the dominoes fall as this final month gets going?
Well, I put a report on ontexasfootball.com earlier today, and Texas did great with Kellen Wy, the 4-star linebacker, senior riser from Sefner Armwood, 6'3.5", 226, 79.5, 80-inch wingspan, 10-plus-inch hands, rangy, fast, physical, good ball skills. Texas, Miami. That's what it's coming down to. And I think Texas has at least a 50-50 shot at this, talking to somebody close to that recruitment. Now, Miami led going to the Texas visit. He'd never been to Texas, so Texas had a chance to blow him and his family away, and they did. Now, Miami's still scheduled for November 23rd, 4th, the last word, so to speak, last official visit. But I think Miami is going to be playing catch up a little bit in this recruitment unless something really crazy happens. And it was just a massive emotional high for Wiley and his family. But I think Texas did very well in that visit. And then you had Riley Pettijohn. Texas took a swing at. It doesn't feel like that's moving right now at the pace it should be. Madden Framo, Texas would still love to get him in on November 23rd. But again, it looks more like Notre Dame 1, USC 2, Texas 3 in that recruitment. He's going to Notre Dame again. Or went to Notre Dame again in November, going to USC again in November, but he hadn't locked in the Texas visit. Now we're playoff time, right? So we'll have to see there at linebacker. Then Nuwasu Boateng, the linebacker from IMG, currently scheduled to come in for the Kentucky game. We'll see if that visit actually takes place. But I think Kellen Wy, Texas has a pretty good shot at the 4-star linebacker from Sefner Armwood to add to would be a third linebacker in this class. And all Texas fans should be very pleased if the linebacker class ended up being Elijah Barnes, Jonathan Cunningham, and Kellen Wy on signing day. But we'll see what happens with Wy.
I don't want to get too over my skis here, Jerry, but 2 or 3 at linebacker regardless. Do you still think the linebacker might be a spot Texas teeters with in the portal for next year?
That's a good question. I don't know that, you're set to lose Benden, Maurice Blackwell, right? And Ty Anthony Smith is such a good-looking prospect. So I guess, CJ, here's the question for you. What is Texas, and we have to figure this out, what does Texas see Cecilia Khan at long-term? Right. Where's Darian Gillette long-term?
That's the wild cards for me.
Because we know Anthony Hill's an All-American who has one more year at Texas after this year. Leon Lafau and Ty Anthony Smith, really good players. I think Ty Anthony Smith may be an all-SEC level type player, and I'm not saying first team. There's first, second, third team. I think he's going to be that good. So then where does it go from there? Elijah Barnes has that versatility to play like Anthony Hill. Jonathan Cunningham, very much in the mold of a Ty Anthony Smith. We'll see if he's that instinctive like Ty Anthony Smith. If you add a third in this class, I think it's really interesting, CJ, what happens with Darian Gillette and Cecilia Kana.
I agree 100%. A third in this class would certainly help the numbers, and that's why I kind of asked the question, because you never know. what those attrition numbers might look like at linebacker with what you would expect to be the 2 starters returning for 2025. But to the secondary, because we got to finish up real quick. I'll start at cornerback. You got one in the class, Caleb Chester. Texas still taking swings at a number of guys. And also a new name has emerged, right? We've talked about it last week. Teased a little bit earlier than that. But Grayson Littleton, listen, that's a talented football player, about 6 foot 175, a little wiry build right there as well. Is that the best looking option right now for Texas at the cornerback spot?
I think it is as of today, November 12th. Now things can change, but I think Texas hit a home run with Littleton as well out of Wiregrass Ranch there, Wesley Chapel, northeast of Tampa. It was Texas-Tampa weekend last weekend when Texas beat up on Florida. But look, Grayson Littleton, Texas has had a little advantage where Kellen Wy had never been to Austin. Grayson Littleton had been to Austin before the official visit last weekend. He plays with California Power, the 7-on-7 team and program, which Myron Charles is a part of, Javion Hilson's a part of. So there's some connections there. Littleton was on campus with those guys last spring, really liked Texas. I'm not sure, Texas didn't make a big official visit push at that time at the cornerback spot. They had added Caleb Chester to the boat in June. So Littleton visited Penn State, visited Clemson, went with Clemson. Then after he announces he's going to decommit, Texas offers him the same day when he decommits from Clemson, and he immediately schedules a visit. So he's been to Michigan, he's been to Texas. We think Texas had a great official visit with him, and as Texas has put themselves in position to win that recruitment, we'll see what happens. Then there's Dorian Brew, the Oregon commitment out of Conroe, who visited for the Georgia game. So we'll see what happens there. But I think the push for Littleton's kind of telling with Dorian Brew and Devin Sanchez not getting on campus. I think Texas likes a kid like Grayson Littleton more than they like a Kobe Sellers on senior tape. And I think Kobe Sellers is a good player, so that tells you how much Texas thinks of Grayson Littleton. So I think there's some guys still out there for Texas, but Littleton, I think, is the leader in the clubhouse if there's going to be a second corner in this class.
Guys still out there in the clubhouse. You might have a leader at cornerback. Safety a little bit different. It feels like that one's all wrapped up. It's got a bow. It's one of the few spots on that Texas secondary, Texas defensive side of the ball for this class that feels like, all right, the reclassification of Zayless Hicks down to 2025 with Jonah Williams in the class. That tells you what I believe to be is that final group for this class. Do you think there's any movement at safety in this class before it's all said and done?
Yeah, no, I think unless something crazy happens with Hicks, and now that he's officially said he's going to reclassify to 25, colleges kind of already knew it. They were pushing after he committed to Texas, and they figured, oh, whoa, hold on, this guy's about to try to reclass. Once colleges caught wind of that, they had to make a final push. He was at Tennessee. He's supposed to be at Florida, Georgia Tech for the Miami game last weekend. So teams are making a last push with Zayless Hicks. He's officially visiting Texas November 23rd for the Kentucky game. That's a great sign for Texas, holding on to Hicks after these schools have made the last pushes for him. Look, he has family in the Dallas area. It's not out of the question his family moves to the Dallas area, assuming he ends up at Texas. But I think with Jonah Williams and Hicks in the boat, Texas is done at safety, and that's about as good as Texas can do. That is 2 SEC-sized safeties that are both physical players. I think Texas hit a home run at safety in this class. And, CJ, I'm going to lead you into the last guy, and that's Michael Terry, because – Michael Terry, you were at the school last Friday for his Adidas All-America jersey ceremony. We know Texas has a big lead over Nebraska, but we also know Nebraska was at the school last week. They continue to Matt Rule and that staff continue to be all in on that recruitment. But, CJ, I think we both agree that Texas is very much the team to beat. The question is, when's he going to make a decision, and announce it?
Yeah, and listen, that's kind of what's up in the air right now. Alamo Heights goes in their playoff run this weekend. They got a first-round opponent. They went 10-0 in the regular season, so they might be playing football for a long time, Jerry. That'll be something to watch. Of course, there were some rumblings out of Alamo Heights that a decision might have come as early as that ceremony last Friday for the Navy All-American Bowl jersey ceremony. I talked to Michael about it. He said, you know what, I'm still putting the final touches on my recruitment. We'll see when that decision date comes. Right now, I don't know. Now, I would be a bit surprised if it went all the way to December 4th. But with that said, Michael Terry, his family, that coaching staff, still trying to put the final touches on everything. I think there will be another ceremony in the gym for him to announce. And again, with one having occurred on Friday of last week, I think you wait a little bit longer for a decision. I don't think, however, you see December with him uncommitted. And still, to reiterate, Texas in a very good spot right now. We'll see if Nebraska is able to pull off a last-minute Hail Mary before it's all said and done there. But a couple more nuggets before we get out of here, Jerry. Before we get to those, a quick word about Mark Saunders and Allstate, and then we'll get out of here.
Yep. Look, Texas Allstate agent Mark Saunders serves the Austin and Round Rock area and all of Texas. He's the only insurance agent you need and to keep tabs on all your stuff: home, car, boat, motorcycle, RV, and ATV. Do what so many other On Texas Football family members have done in the last year plus since Mark Saunders has been sponsoring the show. Give his office a call today, 512-218-8571. Here's a guarantee. I rarely make guarantees. You'll be in great hands with Texas alum Mark Saunders, over 35 years of experience. 512-218-8571.
Perfect. Thank you, Jerry. And thank you again, Mark Saunders, for sponsoring the recruiting breakdown this week at On Texas Football. A couple nuggets that I wanted to go over from this past weekend. Texas, it wasn't a big recruiting weekend for the Longhorns, but there were two offensive playmakers from the West Coast I wanted to hit on real quick. The first, 2026 wide receiver Caden Dixon-Wyatt. Longhorns are a big fan of his. He's been to campus about 4 times now, I want to say, at least in this calendar year. Someone to keep a close eye on out on the West Coast. Obviously, Texas has a lot of ties to Mater Dei, who they also hosted 2027 tight end Mark Bowman, who the Texas staff has been in communication with since his offer in the spring. Bowman also a candidate to reclassify to 2026. We'll keep a close eye on that moving forward. But right now, the two are really interested in the Longhorns, and the Longhorns reciprocating that with getting him on campus for the Florida game. Another guy I wanted to keep a close eye on, Braylon Womack, a top 30 or so defensive back in the 26 class. He's scheduled to be on campus for the Kentucky game in 2 weeks. That's a name that Texas fans should be familiar with by now. Really talented kid. And with Zayla 6 out of the 26 class and into 25, you now have another vacancy at the safety position for Texas to go big game hunting at as well. So
he's one of the top prospects in Mississippi in 26, by the way. He is a big time kid.
Heck of a football player as well. Also, to add to that Kentucky watch list for the visitors, Zayden Crimpin out of Prosper, someone that told me last week will be on campus for the Kentucky game. I talked to him a little bit. Kyle Flood doing a great job establishing an early relationship, as has assistant coach Darren Gatewood as well. The two are really knocking it out of the park early in 2026 on the offensive line in the state of Texas. I don't think Texas will be going out of state all too much for 26, but of course, you never know who might rise up as a late, bloomer in this cycle. But right now, Texas and Crimpin, they got a good relationship going early on. Texas is top of that list at the moment. Any final nuggets or tidbits you want to hit on, Jerry, before we get out?
No, look, it's Texas is going to sign a 4th straight top 5 class. The question is it going to be ranked 5, 4, 3? Do they have a path to 2? I mean, they have a path to 2, but you'd have to run the table. Well, the one thing and get a big flip. The one thing I would say for this class is everybody left on the board helps Texas class rank. And I know some people care about class ranking, some people care about filling needs, but everybody left on the board for Texas, it helps their class ranking, is a 4-star level kid, a couple of high 4-star level kids. So we'll see what happens. But I think right now I kind of have the number 3 class circled for Texas. So I guess I'm out here, CJ, saying I think they're going to win 3 or 4 guys late and get the 26 commitments. And if they get the 26 commitments with what's left out there, then that would mean that they're probably going to have the 3 class, maybe 4 if somebody else adds some guys. But this Texas recruiting class, the highest ranked class Sark has signed since he's been here, is ranked number 3. That was the 23 class with Arch Manning, Cedric Baxter, Jonte Cook, Manny Muhammad, and all those guys. It was a tremendous class with a lot of depth. This Texas 25 class has a chance to mirror that in terms of depth of class.
It's a pretty special class load, and of course, that's all coming down in the next 25 days, right in that range, 3.5, 4 weeks remaining before quote-unquote signing day. So we'll see, and of course, there should be some movement here before then as well to fill out this class. Texas sitting with 22 commits in the cycle. That should move before then as well. But Gerry, thank you again for your time. Mark Sanders, thank you very much for sponsoring the recruiting breakdown. But for Gerry, for myself, CJ Vogel, this has been On Texas Football. Y'all have a good one. Until next weekend. Welcome.